Hi, my name's Ash McMurray. I'm a philosophy student here at Brigham Young University in Provo. Friedrich Nietzsche stood aghast in a chasm that divided the world. This rift, left by a myriad of thinkers from Descartes to Kant, sat between two irreconcilable realms, the empty phenomenal world and the meaningless nominal world. Nietzsche found this intolerable. Not only was the so-called real world beyond our grasp, but the world itself stood naked, without meaning. This became the epicenter of his life's work. Rather, he sought to answer this basic question. In a fundamentally meaningless world, what sort of life could justify itself, could be worth living? To this end, Nietzsche recast the world to make space for justified existence by first finding dignity in our meaning as works of art framed by a Dionysian world in itself, a world replete with as much joy as tragedy. Second, negating the real world and affirming only the phenomenal world. Third, recognizing the death of God. Fourth, reevaluating the values we receive from false deity. And fifth, celebrating the Oberman, who creates value and thereby creates a life so meaningful that it would be worth living over and over for eternity. Prior to Hegel, metaphysical and epistemological thought struggled to find ultimate principles for knowledge. Eventually, this effort collapsed into an uncompromising conflict that threatened to undermine all knowledge of the external world. Immanuel Kant was able to reorient the discussion in order to save knowledge, but at a cost. Our world would be forever divided into a knowable phenomenal or apparent world and an unknowable nominal world, the world of things in themselves, or what others would call the real world. Hegel attempted to resolve this split by eliminating the division between subjects and objects of knowledge. Schopenhauer, Hegel's contemporary, solved the problem of the unknowable real world in another way. He felt, contrary to Kant, that one could know the world in itself. The real world, he said, was a world of wills. This world of wills, which Nietzsche characterized as akin to the Greek god Dionysus, the god of passionate, raw living, continuously creates the life and world we experience. For a documentary discussing Nietzsche's views and the context within which they were raised, please see the link below. Nietzsche's first attempt to justify meaningful existence relies heavily on Schopenhauer's world of wills. He felt this justification was best exemplified in the pre-Socratic Greek tragedies, dramas that stared unflinchingly into the depth of human sorrow and suffering. The only way to justify meaningful life, according to Nietzsche, was to appreciate our lives as the Greeks appreciated the tragedy, as aesthetically beautiful. In other words, only the aesthetic value of life as the beautiful, joyous, and terrible creation of the Dionysian will, justifies it and makes it worth living. However, eventually Nietzsche rejects this position and embarks on a far more radical line of thought. The world of wills was a metaphysical postulation that claimed that fundamental reality behind the apparent world is a monistic whole. All things are manifestations of a singular force. Unfortunately, this kind of reality submerged existence into a deep and abiding pessimism. Relief from existential frustration is possible only through submission and acceptance. Nietzsche rejected this result and concluded that no such real world exists. The only world is the apparent world. The real world is only projection of the inner desires of misguided men. Lacking a real world to give meaning to the phenomenal world, a new solution was needed. But before the solution could be pursued, Nietzsche saw that the realization of the phenomenal world as the only world had profound ramifications. Justified existence demanded a revolution, and mankind readied the guillotine for Almighty God. Previously, Nietzsche maintained, God was the ultimate foundation of meaningful life. Within the context of creation and salvation of God's plan, we justified our existence. Now, however, the metaphysical real world of God no longer exists. There is no place for God. God cannot exist. So, we murdered him. Nietzsche offers several possible explanations for the death of the Christian deity. Pity, the very opposite of a life-affirming emotion, causes one to deplore the condition of someone else's existence. God pities all mankind, an all too great pity, pity that could undermine even his own will to live, and he might simply wither away. Morality, too, could have slain God. The Christian God commands us to be honest and true. However, the rise of scientific atheism made it impossible for the honest individual to positively assert belief in deity, and so Christian morality itself demanded intellectual honesty that ultimately would not tolerate a divine being. Finally, the ugliest man, unable to live with a curious, over-obtrusive, over-pitying deity standing witness to a life that could not withstand examination, slew God in violent desperation. Although the death of God allows a new era of open enlightenment, Nietzsche fears his demise will cause the majority of humanity to despair, to feel as if the source of all values has dried up. Weariness of life, finding everything empty, dry, shallow, meaningless, the same, that is the mood of nihilism. And nihilism is the threat from which Nietzsche must now defend himself, indeed, defend all humanity. Nihilism is a beast that is not easily conquered, and so Nietzsche starts at the heart of the problem. The world now, the only world, is valueless. There is no God, no cosmic order, no divine purpose or plan. To justify life, we are on our own. Therefore, Nietzsche concludes, any values that we might see at all are bestowed on nature by us. There are no moral facts at all, he says, and since our old source of values is a disembodied corpse, if we want to find any worth in existence, all value must be re-evaluated. Nietzsche determines not to follow in the footsteps of his predecessors by ignoring the problem of morality. Past philosophers focused on providing rational foundations for morality without ever justifying morality itself. Why have morality at all? Thus, Nietzsche calls for a genealogy of morals in order to understand morality and where it went awry. The genealogy of morality begins with the original meaning of the word good. Good, he claims, was originally derived from the good themselves, the strong, the smart, the elevated. Those who were good, those self-affirming people of the first rank, used good to designate themselves in contrast to everything beneath them. This morality of the conquerors, or master morality, designates itself in terms of good and bad. Bad merely contrasts, identifying only what is not good. Masters affirm their own goodness, all else is inconsequential. However, a second morality exists, slave morality. Contrasting with master morality, slave morality defines itself in terms of good and evil. Evil affirms nothing, it only negates. Since slaves are powerless, they are at the mercy of their good masters, who cause them to suffer, who cause them resentment. Resentment causes the slave to look outward towards some non-self, which opposes or hinders them, as the master does. Thus, against the master's self-evaluation as good, the slave calls him evil. Good, then, in contrast to evil, must take the form of the slave. It carries the attributes the master lacks. And so Nietzsche points out, the slaves have acted out the most intelligent revenge, in which they have persuaded the strong to adopt the values of the weak and suppress their own goodness. Historically, Nietzsche claims this reversal of morality has been carried out by the Jews and continued by the Christians. Thus, Israel and Christendom have transformed and undermined all nobler ideals. Now the free spirit is fettered to false ideas such as equality and democracy, symptoms of decadence that prevent us from excelling and bind us down to a bar of mediocrity. Therefore, only complete abandonment of our Judeo-Christian values will allow us to be who we truly are, the only condition in which life can find value. For continued discussion of Nietzsche's critique of Christianity, please follow the link to a video below. What do people free from the chains of our traditional values, who embrace life and their own existence, look like? According to Nietzsche, these people are human, more than human. They are overmen. Overmen do not try to look beyond to some real world or afterlife. They are possessed with great health that allows them to achieve their maximum potential. They are not content with mandates or restrictions, but break free from them in a self-affirming I will that determines and demands everything, for they create themselves, not some lesser reflection. The Overmen are akin to artists or poets who create and live within the beauty of their own creations. As masters of their being, Overmen love themselves. They never indulge in what is easy, weak, or self-effacing. Since Overmen live such lives, they know their worth. They recognize themselves as superior to all others. In short, Nietzsche declares, an Overman says yes to life itself, who is strong enough for such a yes. In self-affirmation and in continual self-overcoming, the Overman finds his joy, and in individuals like that, the earth finds its meaning. The final test for the Overman, Nietzsche says, is that of eternal recurrence. The only life worth living is a life worth living over and over again for eternity ad nauseum ad infinitum. If life like this exists, and Nietzsche affirms its possibility, then existence is justified, and the whole earth has found its purpose to the destruction of all despair, pessimism, and the black beast of nihilism. A more detailed summary of Nietzsche's thought can be found below in a link to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. In achieving his ultimate goal, Nietzsche left a profound legacy. Apart from enduring influence in philosophical, psychological, and sociological thought, his influence was first felt among avant-garde artists who found appeal in his ideas of overcoming oneself and constant striving for creativity and excellence. For a more detailed account on the individuals influenced by Nietzsche's work, see the link to the Encyclopedia Britannica below. Unfortunately, the Nazi and Italian fascist movements in the 1930s drew upon and manipulated parts of Nietzsche's thought to promulgate their own agendas by using selected passages to justify war, aggression, and domination. Nietzsche would have found their manipulation of his thought and violent anti-Semitism abhorrent. For further analysis of Nietzsche's influence on Hitler, please follow the link listed at the end of this article. Although his association with Nazism prevented him from serious philosophical consideration in the English-speaking world until the late 1950s, Nietzsche's influence since then has been dynamic. This is especially the case in France and the United States during the 1960s through the 1980s, when his declaration of God's death and his ideas concerning the motivational and explanatory aspect of power for people's actions spurred political reformation and pointed social critiques. Moreover, Nietzsche's rejection and reevaluation of Judeo-Christian values, his humanistic alternatives, and his emphasis on self-creation influenced, inspired, and set the stage for important developments such as Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis and Martin Heidegger's existential philosophy of being.